on Monday. I made it, I left it out for about 5 hours, and then I cold fermented it overnight. Depending on the temperature and the climate that you're in, you could leave it out all night. In Denver, we leave it out all night. It's depending on the temperature of the kitchen that we're making it in, and how fast the yeast is reacting. This worked good for 5 hours. We would leave it sometimes outside 17 to 24 hours, room temperature. Yesterday I come in and pull the starter out, and now we make our final dough recipe. I like to do a bulk fermentation here. So we mix our flour, water, yeast. I put some of that starter in, and then I do the salt and the extra virgin olive oil. I don't use sugar in the dough. We use a diastatic malt. So we're proud that we don't put sugar in any of our ingredients that we use. We don't put it in our sauce, we don't put it in our dough. Natural sugars already exist in the flour. So the final dough, I make it yesterday in this mixer here, and then I put it in this bus tub. I left it out for like 5 more hours, and then we put it in at 41 degrees in the walk-in overnight. Again, sometimes you might leave it out overnight. Very rare situations would you do that. Maybe we make it late at night, the final dough, and we need it the next day. We might leave it out overnight because the guys come in at like 7 in the morning to make the dough for the next day. So this is the final dough here. Same thing, I'm using 64% as in my starter. So again, if I'm using 10 pounds of flour in my final dough, now I have my water, 6.4 pounds, another 1/4 to 1/2% of yeast. I use my malt, salt, and extra virgin olive oil. A big difference that I came up with, and it's kind of crazy how much biga I put in it, but I put 40% biga into it. But I'm also blending flours too. What I was taught at the pizza school, Tony's like 15 to 20% starter that you're putting in it. So I'm using a low protein flour in my starter, the biga. It's like 12%. I'm using a high protein flour in my final dough. Again, yesterday I'm talking to 3 guys in the competition area. They're doing totally different stuff, but yet they're in the same seats you guys were last year or the year before. So final dough. Now I come in the next day, so which was this morning. Getting here at 7, because I probably want like 3 hours for my par bake to proof. So we get here at 7. Giles and I get here at 7. We cut a little chunk off of this. Put it on our scale. I'm using it just like this. Put it on the scale. 8 ounces if I'm making a small. That's what I use. 8.5 ounces. About 17, 18 ounces if I'm using this larger pan. The oil that I use in the pan. You gotta use some kind of fat in the pan. Everybody uses something different. I actually like vegetable shortening for a number of reasons. One, we get to put it on with a brush. When I put it in the pan, you make sure you're getting the shortening all the way to the corners, you're getting the tops, you're getting everything so that it slides down. 2, after I push the dough, vegetable shortening is kind of sticky. So you don't get a lot of snapback on the dough when you're pushing it in the pan. It tends to stick better, especially to the sides too. You want to make sure you're getting your dough to the corners, caramelized cheese, and to the edge. So you get that caramelized cheese. You don't want a gap in between here. So I usually like to put it on the table here. Say this is 8 ounces. I push it. I have my vegetable shortening in here. Yesterday, hey, what do you guys use in the competition area? Just talking to the guys that are doing Detroit style. Corn oil, canola oil, extra virgin olive oil. Nobody is using vegetable shortening. So come up with what works for your pan, what works for your climate, what works for your oven, what works for the dough recipe that you have. It's all different. What I'm doing is probably not going to work for you. Come up with something that works for you guys. So I push it out here, I put it in the pan. I usually let it rest for a little bit in the pan. Again, Telluride, Denver, very dry climate. We have these lids. I put the lid on it. We go through all our Detroits. So we're doing a triple rise method. rising here, and in the final dough, again, rising here for the second time. We go through all the pizzas again, get them to the corners, get the dough to the corners, all the way around, let it rise again for the third time. That's how we train our staff. We're using this triple rise method that it's just kind of unique to what we're doing. Now I'm gonna let these rise in the pan. It could be 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, it depends. You know, at altitude, it's usually faster. This was done at probably 7:30 or 7:45. Can you guys see this better if I stand here or over here? There. In the cam? Okay. All right, so this about doubled in size. You can still see my vegetable shortening. I get it to the corners. You can see my rise here is at least double. This is what it would look like if it wasn't. It's very nice and airy. I'm ready to definitely par bake this. Now, what if you don't have time? Oh, we got to open an hour ago. We're still waiting for them to rise. It's not critical that you get the perfect rise on them. I actually did these earlier. These probably weren't ready to go when I par baked these. It was about an hour and a half that I let them rise versus 3 hours. And I still got a really good par bake out of it. This one's going to come out much nicer, I think. A little bit lighter and airier just because I let it ferment for a longer amount of time. So what I like to do now, after I let it rise, I'm going to go into the cheese that we use. It's different for everybody. Everybody's using different cheese. Do you have to use brick to have Detroit style? No. You can use mozzarella. I know a guy in Pittsburgh is using Munster. The guys in Ohio, back here, they're using provolone, and they're doing Detroit. What does your town like? Is it, if you put brick on the pizza, are they going to be like, what the heck is this? It's really expensive too. So try out different cheeses. You don't have to use brick cheese you don't have to be this authentic Detroit style pizzeria. Come up with your own way of doing it. At the end game, when we take it out of the pan, we still all are getting this great, light, airy, crispy crust with the caramelized cheese around it, usually sauce on top. We're baking around the same temperatures. So I like to put aged white cheddar around the edge right now before I par bake. Show you guys how it's about 1.5 ounces, and I get 1 to 1.5 ounces. It's not a lot that I'm putting on this pizza here. Making sure that I get it to the corners. So I feel like the Crisco helps the vegetable shortening, or it's Crisco that we use, helps the dough stick to the edge and the corners. Now I'm even securing it further with this aged white cheddar. So I'm going aged white cheddar around the edge, getting it to the corners, and then I'm going to go in for my par bake. So oven, the first time we're going to use the oven here. I said, you don't need to have a deck oven. You can use a conveyor oven. I bake Detroit styles at home in a regular oven. They come out awesome. We do them when we do like little tiny events, Giles and I, we do them in a toaster oven that we bring to the event. It comes out awesome. So don't go out and buy a brand new oven right now. You don't need it to test out your Detroit. Now, if you're going to open a Detroit style pizzeria, then you might want to consider, hey, I'm going to do a conveyor, I'm going to do a deck. But just testing it out, you don't need it. I prefer deck. That's what I learned on doing round pizza. I like the artisan factor of a deck oven where you can get little hot spots in it. You can rotate the pizza. I just kind of feel more like it's more technique involved. But all the other ovens work great too. So here's about my 1 ounce on here. The temperature for my par bake, ideally for us, 450 to 500. But hey, we run out of Detroits like for lunch, or we're getting really low. We need to do a second par bake in the afternoon. Our oven's already 600 degrees. So we par bake, we're gonna have to par bake, maybe turn it down to 550, but we're not at the 450. So again, you just gotta pivot and adjust to what's going on that day. But I'm gonna go in, it's gonna be probably 6 to 8 minutes. I'm gonna get a little browning on top. One crazy thing I heard yesterday, competition area again, I keep going back to that, but this is good for you guys, because hey, your method might not work what I'm doing, but one of the other ones, the little tweaks. So a guy over there, hey, he keeps his lid on when he goes into the par bake. Keeps the moisture inside. So I tried a couple of those earlier. You can tell the difference. This is one that I have the lid on for the par bake. A little softer crust probably, more moisture in it. I haven't actually tested it yet. I haven't tasted it, so I don't know the flavor profile of it. Mine's gonna come out more looking like this. A little spotted on top. You can see the aged white cheddar around the edge. It's not gonna burn. It kind of turns more of a yellow. That's why I'm putting it around the edge too. If I put mozzarella around the edge right now, I get a black crust, which isn't necessarily bad, but for a par bake, now I gotta go back in again at 600 degrees for like another 10 minutes. It's probably gonna get really charred. So a little different, a little tweak there. Try lid on, I'm gonna go no lid here. Go in the top oven, or the bottom oven. We're actually at 522. Again, not my ideal temperature. A little hot, but it's still gonna come out great.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for that great introduction to Detroit-style pizza. You can visit Jeff at his pizzerias Brown Dog Pizza in Telluride, Colorado, and Blue Pan Pizza in Denver. I'll put all the resources Jeff discussed below this video. And while you're here, if you could show a little pizza love and subscribe, Pizza on Earth, goodwill to all.